Hello all you feckers, this is the business section of Feck TV and very welcome you all are. The first thing we're going to discuss today for 1 second is the headline we found out of the Examiner, which was best known property firm devalues assets by 12.8 million, leaving the company 10.5 million in the red. And would you believe what was the name of the company? Airspace Investments.
Ironic.
Very ironic, and mind you, in fairness, they're after getting from 2008 to 2012 before they collapsed. Well, before they went into the red, they haven't collapsed. Before they went into the red, not like a lot of others, I suppose.
No.
You could well say. Speaking about property again, at the Irish Times, we've got an article in a National Irish Bank building in College Green, €4 million, 30,000 square feet. And would you not think to yourself that that would be a serious investment? Prime location.
That's a valuable property.
A valuable property.
It kind of screams everything's fucked.
Yeah.
You know, that's like kind of the message in there, because I mean, like, I know that building and it's an absolutely fabulous building. I remember when I was a kid passing by, and there was this sort of petition to make sure that the interior was going to be maintained, all this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's like prime location in Dublin. And what it says is, you know, National Irish Bank, which I think is a subsidiary of National Australia Bank, they don't have faith in the country in the long term. Otherwise, like you were saying, they'd rent it out, they'd do something like that, they'd wait for the value to recover. But instead, they're just like, hey, we've got to cut the losses here, you know, we're out, you know, screw you guys, we're going home.
Well, I can understand that they're trying to go more online banking and they're shutting down branches, rightly or wrong, that's their choice. But you'd say they'd hold on to the building and lease it, as you said. I mean, that to put a tag of €4 million, mind you, I think it's a guide tag. But even to mention that figure for a building in College Green in Dublin of 30,000 square feet of that standard of a building is frightening.
Absolutely, and just as, let's say, a physical advertisement for the bank, you know, almost like, you know, wearing a tuxedo or your best suit or something like this, it's an impressive building. It makes an impact. So if they're like divesting themselves of that, I mean, like, granted, I'm sure they're not going to have their headquarters in Ireland in a bungalow or something. Maybe they will, you know, maybe they're like, maybe that's being ahead of the curve.
Time, if the bank needs money, that's the way to make money. This is a little bit like the field, you know, farmers not wanting to sell their bit of a field.
Yeah.
I mean, if they need money, sell the building.
If they need 4 million breed, there's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, when you actually think that, you know, actual residential houses in Dublin, you know, at one stage we're going for like 4 million, this sort of thing. You know, it's a big statement. But hey, I'm sure they know what they're doing. I mean, they're bankers. Everybody knows they're clever people, you know.
That's
they don't
right.
make mistakes.
That's how right you are. Moving on from that, on the Irish Times today, I see Roger Gifford, who is the mayor of the city in London, quoted, London's role as a gateway to Europe. Ireland could benefit from this.
I think you actually mispronounced that right there. I think he probably said it more like, London's role as a gateway to Europe. Ireland can benefit, you know?
Thank you very much. I should have left you introduced.
These things are important.
Yeah.
You know, like you know, you have to pronounce it properly that way.
So what would we say back to him?
You're a prick. No, pretty much. I mean, like, I could be totally wrong here, but this guy, he sounds to me like the kind of, you know, public school, Eton educated, went to sort of like maybe Eton or not Eton, but like, you know, Oxford or Cambridge after possibly Sandhurst. And, you know, he probably, okay, I'm not going to go too far into it in case I start like pegging him as, you know, having bigotries that he doesn't have. But look, he's trying to promote London, all this kind of stuff.
But isn't it very arrogant to come over here, like?
Wait, did he say it to Americans?
Well,
he said it to everybody, I think.
No, he was here in Ireland.
Yeah?
Oh.
In Ireland.
Okay.
Ireland could benefit from London's role as a gateway to Europe. So he has it fixed that London is a gateway to Europe and Ireland isn't. And we're just the sidecasts of this. Of course, this all has to do with the transaction tax.
Okay.
Because London refuses to impose a transaction tax on, you know, this is where the billions swap hands and all the rest of it, and there's no transaction tax. And that's what they're benefiting. But sure, we should introduce a transaction free tax zone, or transaction tax-free zone.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. We
I
should.
wish there was someone there just with some balls who'd have said to him, "Hi, anything you can do, we can do better.
That's
we
right.
can be your transition to Europe."
That's
Oh,
right.
somebody should have sort of
This is-
smuggled in Eamon Dunphy or something like this,
Well,
to
you
just
know,
sort of like
This
go,
is just,
hey, you,
yeah.
Yeah.
and just like put it up to him.
But
Maybe
no, I
moon him or
suppose- no,
something.
See him there
Yeah.
swanning around with his tray of Ferrero Rocher.
I
going,
know.
"Oh."
Oh, and he probably does eat them,
Yeah, I
doesn't he?
bet.
And caviar and
He
things
sounds
like that.
kind of
No,
Yeah,
but
I
you know,
hate him. I
the
hate
accent,
this
the accent
guy.
you had there, putting on the London accent. What we need is get Jackie Healy-Rae to reply to it. London could benefit from Ireland's role as a gateway to Europe, you whore.
Yeah,
Something like that.
I don't know. The only problem with Jackie Healy-Rae, and I, like, if you're watching this, Jackie, I do mean this with humour, but the smell of sheep dip or whatever and silage and all this kind of thing, I'm not sure about that. You just have people passing out in the press conference. That's my guess anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's a bit harsh as a country cousin to Ferrari girl.
Yeah, but I
gonna
mean,
be
he's at a whole
little
other.
offended by that there, but
Yeah.
where are you from yourself?
Look, I see myself
You
as a
townie?
citizen of the world, but yeah,
Are you a
yeah,
townie?
yeah. I was born in Dublin, grew
There
up
you
here
go.
in Cork and like different places, so
Yeah.
yeah, like I do see
Jackie
myself
Healy-Rae
as-
was once
You
asked,
really-
he was once asked, does he ever take off his cap? And he said, no, he didn't. And he said, he turned around and he made the comment, he said, do take down your drawers and you scratch your arse.
That's terrible.
He's also the guy who, when it was like talked about putting gondolas on like some of the lakes out in Killarney, that he was like, who'll feed him in the winter? You know what I mean? Like,
Fair enough.
Class act, though.
oh yeah. Well, I mean, like, geez, it worked for him for long enough, and he got a lot of money into his constituency, to the detriment of every place else in the country. But
Exactly. Anyway, moving along, I noticed yesterday on an article somewhere or something I listened to on the radio where they were saying the judges were soft on burglars. And this would be more your field breed, but it dawned on me that the article was wrong because, first of all, the judges have nowhere to put them. The prison space is full, and maybe it's a question of, well, I have to prioritise my prison space. So he cut 2 arms off a fella last night, but this fella murdered somebody, so I have to put the murderer in prison,
Yeah.
and we work on from there. But my take on this was, why can we not come up with a chip that we can put on somebody, put some electronic thing around their house, and make sure that for 6 months they don't go outside their own house and make them imposed in the prison in their own house. And maybe there's a business opportunity for some IT person to go and make that. But
yeah, the one thing about that, like putting aside different concerns to do with civil liberties and so forth, is to make sure you get the right house, because I mean, like this, like some of these dudes, they could be there and say,
Some
yeah,
have
this
cribs.
huge house here,
Well,
yeah,
in fairness-
I'm in the house, so it's obviously my house,
Like electronic tagging does exist. The science is there. It is done. It's just nobody's really taken it.
It has been used in the States a little bit, hasn't it? I mean,
it's
like
used quite a bit.
yeah,
But
was
even
Charlie
in
Sheen
Ireland-
tagged at one stage that he had like one of these ankle
Yes.
bracelets, and there's
And I
actually
think
a car ad about it where
Lindsay
he's like quizzing
Lohan
around.
has had it and things as well. She's got in
Yeah?
fierce trouble over it. And I think it detects her alcohol levels and all sorts of things as well.
Oh,
but
that's
you do have the
freakish.
problem in Ireland
Yeah.
that, I don't know how that works, but that's what I think. You do have a position in Ireland, though, where you have people committing crimes, like
Yeah.
beating up someone or something, and they come into you as a solicitor and they're like, what am I going to get on whatever day court's on? And you're just like, well, technically I have to tell you that there is technically a prison sentence that you could get,
Yeah.
but you're not going to get it because you didn't kill someone, or it wasn't bad enough, or, I mean, these are proper crimes, but unless your maximum sentence is something like, I mean, it's an indictable crime, or unless it's
Yeah.
something very, very serious, according to the textbook, you're not really going to go to prison. Plus, if someone gets, the average person who gets, say, a month not suspended, is in a real month, that's a weekend. They will be let out after a weekend.
Yeah.
It's a desperate way, yeah.
So what
They-
you?
they-
sorry,
it
go on.
means
burglary pays.
I'm actually thinking
Maybe that's the
now is the
business idea.
time to
Yeah.
actually engage in petty crime.
Yeah,
this is
maybe
what I'm
that's-
taking
Now is
from
the
what you're
time to
telling
engage
me.
in a lot of crimes.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't say it, but I mean, you've got so many things, like we've got so many things that are regulated by the Data Protection Commissioner.
Yeah.
There's almost nobody regulating that. Competition Authority, there's almost nobody regulating that.
Mm.
It's a great time to be, doing a lot of crimes. I'm not suggesting
I got
anyone
it wrong.
should, because the guards are doing their work. But there's no room in prisons. You will get a sentence and you will get a conviction and you will get
Yeah.
a criminal record, which will mean you can't go on holidays so much and you can't go to America and get your
Yeah.
visas and things. But yeah, if you're
Actually,
British
Maybe
do you know
crime
what?
could be a cottage
But
industry.
do you know what I was thinking? Maybe I got that wrong. Maybe we need to inside the house. Maybe we need to put the electronic thing around their bedroom and the bathroom. You can't even go downstairs.
Okay, so they would actually be confined to certain areas, and then maybe to make it even a little bit more like prison, sort of like, tag their dick somehow so that, they can't get laid or anything like that, and then they're paying.
Yeah.
You know?
That'd be way worse. wouldn't it?
Yeah. That'd be a cruel and unusual punishment, or really, really funny.
Yeah.
You
one or the
decide.
other. Exactly.
Oh, I can see that actually being a nightmare for the people who have to enforce it, though. You can see the stories coming out.
Well, look. This is a technological thing. I mean, let's say with the ankle bracelet, to really, really motivate them to stay inside, instead of like a buzzer going off and somebody coming along and wagging a finger, have a small explosive there. Okay, so you walk outside your gate, bang, your foot's gone. Now apply that logic to the other tagging I mentioned earlier on.
Sharia law.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's funny, you have
Sharia
actually,
don't like
we
it,
have
yeah.
had over the past years several prisoners who've applied for conjugal rights and things in Irish law, and they've taken the cases.
Yeah.
The judges in Ireland have said, no, you're not entitled to your conjugal rights when you're in prison.
Even if they're married.
Even if you're married. That was the basis on which they took the case.
Really?
But no, it wasn't
It didn't
successful.
work for them, it didn't
Unlike
work.
in America, when you do have your conjugal rights, which I just find wrong, really.
Well, I mean, maybe it keeps the prisoners more sedate. Like, think of it that
I
way.
suppose that's the argument.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's America, they're angry people. A lot of angry, poor people.
I suppose you have a point.
Exactly. Anyway, moving on. Ryanair.
Poor Americans.
Yeah.
How did we get into
Yeah,
that?
well,
Jeez.
I'm like-
Anyway.
Exactly. So Ryanair, is it a viable model, business model moving forward? We all know how much money they're making. We all know how successful they are, how successful Michael O'Leary is.
Yeah.
But I wonder, are people starting to see the real cost of a Ryanair flight? I mean, I'm not going on about the same the thing as baggage charges and all the stuff that they have, that everybody else is going. But I just looked at the real cost of a Ryanair flight from a different side, from their charges. And I came up with, because of they're not paying landing fees, they are paying landing fees, but they have every airport cut to the bone on landing fees, let's put it that way, and every airport has to make money. So therefore, every airport is automatically putting up the rents on the restaurants, pubs, bars, whatever, car parking, everything that's inside in the airport in order to make money. Whether you put the money on the Ryanair flight or you put it on the car park charge, it's the same thing. But you would say, in my opinion, it's a rough estimate that you would say that everything is 20% more expensive in all the airports due to the airport having to make money that used to be put onto the flight, and there's no, not so because of this model. So you would say that the average person, between parking a car and buying a couple of pints, whatever, bit to eat, they spend €80 on a return trip in airports, between parking and whatever, of which 20% of that would be €16. That you could attribute to the Ryanair flight if you worked it the way it was previous. Then you look at train tickets, bus tickets, because they're going to land you somewhere near your destination, which is going to be an hour away. Or whatever.
You have to take the camel into town or whatever.
Exactly, yeah. So
Yeah.
no matter which way, you take an average of €20, I suppose, from Stansted in and out of London or something like that. Anyway, I don't know.
£20, the Stansted Express or Gatwick
Right.
or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Sometimes the train's as expensive as the flight that you take. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another €20 because you've
And
landed.
it often lands you too late to get a train. If you've got something and you get in, it's after 12 or something.
Yeah.
You're in the middle of Prestwick or something and no way to get out of there.
Yeah.
It's happened.
So that's €20 on top of the 16 I've already identified
Yeah.
as €36, and then comes the point where your time. What is the value on your time? The average salary in Ireland is something in the region of €35,000 a year, and you'd say to yourself, well, that works out at €20 an hour. If your working time, you valued your working time at the average person in Ireland has valued their working time at €20 per hour. Is your social time not worth the same? Is it worth less or more to you? That's another conversation. But let's presume that it's equal to your working time. So now with your train in and your train out in the hour, that's another €40. So when you combine all this, outside of all the ridiculous charges, the actual price of the flight, you need to put 76 euros on the return on the flight on top of it, that nobody sees.
Yeah.
And all this, you know, you were saying there over in the UK, there was some.
Oh yeah, well I mean like Michael O'Leary, he spoke in front of the House of Commons Transport Committee, I think, was it Monday or Friday? Monday, I think. And once again, he was complaining about like the landing charges. He was saying that it's cheaper to get somebody from Ireland to Spain or France or Italy than it is over to the UK, which, I mean, you can actually see the just in terms of fuel costs or whatever, it seems counterintuitive that that would be the case. But his thing is the landing charges. Now, the truth of the matter is that, you know, Michael O'Leary is, you know, the guy's a tiger, there's no doubt about it. But he will complain about everything. And he also dropped in some of his great quotes. He described the idea of another airport in London as being insane and harebrained. I love that kind of stuff out of him. I mean, I think you know, he's a controversial character, and I wouldn't agree with a lot of the stuff he says, but at least he's interesting. In terms of what you're saying about the about like the actual real cost of taking a Ryanair flight, when you take in everything else, like the train from, you know, Gatwick or whatever into central London, the cost of food, all of which is being passed on to the consumer. Is it a viable model, the Ryanair model? I would say so, just from the point of view that working people have so many pressures on their time, so many different things to think about. You know, they won't be thinking so much about all these extra different charges that are coming in.
You know,
and that's what makes it a viable model in that case.
Yeah, but well, exactly. You know? That's exactly right.
Even Aer Lingus flights are now more expensive as a result of Ryanair, because the rates and the rents and the car parking and everything's risen. So like, worse, you know the way if you buy a sandwich in a cafe in Dublin Airport or whatever airport in the country, it's €8.50 for 2 slices of bread. Well, were they always that expensive? Or is it as a result of all the airline companies getting more and more competitive, and then they have to rise the rents, and then the price of everything has gone up?
Yeah.
So Ryanair has effectively cost everyone more money.
Correct, exactly. And I think, in fairness to Michael O'Leary, like, you'd have to take your hat off to him if you had one. You know, to date he's built this. Now you look at it and you say, our Aer Lingus flights. Can you imagine the cost of an Aer Lingus flight were Ryanair not there? I mean, you know, there's an awful lot to be said for it, but I don't know, are people, you know, if I had a daughter, right, and this is no offence, in my opinion, I would prefer her to work as a high-class escort rather than work as a Ryanair air hostess. Because this idea of getting 60 and 70-year-old people trying to shove bags into something that by a millimetre that are wrong, I mean, it's different if it's, you know what I mean? Going along selling stuff inside an airplanes, scratch cards up and down and annoying people every 10 minutes. Like, if my daughter was doing that, I'd be, or son, mind, I'd be there and I'd be going, oh, Jesus Christ. And that's no reflection on the people working for Ryanair, but you think to yourself, do they ever stop like and think, what in the name of Jesus am I doing this for? Annoying people like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's actually there's 2 angles on that. I presume that Ryanair, like, they'll pay people as little as possible or whatever, but I do think that O'Leary probably knows to hold on to the staff, but he just wants to make as much money as possible. One thing about the cost of things in airports and how that relates to the landing fees, you have to remember as well that just as a business, let's say a cafe in an airport or a pub in an airport, their natural inclination is going to be to charge as much as they think people are going to pay, and especially in a situation like that where it's uncompetitive.
But I wouldn't agree with that at all.
Look,
I wouldn't agree with that. I mean, if you've got 2 restaurants, and in fairness now in the airports there are 2 or 3 different restaurants, right? If I was running the restaurant, well, I'd be looking at it the other way. I'd be looking, how much value can I give to the customer? And I look at the amount of seats I've available, right?
Yeah.
And I look at the competition within the airport, and I look at the amount of seats that are available, and I think, right, if my seats are half full, I need to offer more value or whatever to fill them seats. Now, if there's a queue outside the door, then I need to adjust again. So I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah, though I think part of the thing here is that you're all heart. You know, like, one of the things about it.
It's not hard though. It's got to do with. I think it's.
Well, it's offering value, absolutely, and I mean that is a far better business model to pursue, to actually focus on value for the customer rather than screwing the customer over. One thing about a carrier like Ryanair is that it still will bring a lot of people through an airport.
Yeah.
So there is profit to be made that way. Now, I think that's a very far-sighted approach. Sadly, though, I think that with a lot of businesses, and Ireland it was just so much an example of this during the boom years. I mean, the fact that we had shows like, what was it, Eddie Hobbs and that program, you know, like Rip Off Republic or You're Getting Screwed or whatever it was. It was all about charging the max that you can, you know, like people can pay this much, we'll charge that much, and the focus wasn't on quality. Now, obviously, as a long-term business model, the businesses that succeed in the long term, they focus on quality, but, you know, the quick and easy buck,
But let me
people
ask you a
want
question.
that.
Let me ask you a question this way, right? You look at the Ryanair model, we all know what it is. Everybody hates Ryanair. Now, in their own way, not hates Ryanair, in their own way. You know, they say
everybody has issues with Ryanair.
yeah, exactly. That's a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
Or most people have issues with Ryanair. Let's put it that way, right? But the bottom line is, supposing somebody came along, you're talking about, you know, value to the customer and a pleasant experience, like, you know, and all the rest of it. Now, supposing somebody came along and they called an airline, a new airline, mind you, they'd want deep pockets, but if they come along, right, and they said a new airline, and we're going to call this airline O'Leary plus 10, okay? And every flight that Ryanair offered, at whatever price they offered, O'Leary plus 10, this new airline, would offer at €10 more.
Yeah.
But you'd be treated like a human. That is the end of Ryanair. Like that. So he's treating people like shit, or in my opinion, in a lot of people's opinion, and the only reason he can get away with it is because there's no alternative there at the moment. Somebody come with enough money and €10 more, would you pay €10 more to fly with an airline that wasn't going to stick you to that much, you know, an inch and a thing, or arse you around over this, that? Of course you'd pay €10 more. I'd say 90% of the population would, which would leave Mr. O'Leary with 10% of the population like that. So while there's no alternative, yes, he's a viable proposition. Someday, somebody from somewhere is going to come along with an alternative airline somewhere, and the minute people have an alternative, bang, that's it. So that's where I was coming from in the saying, I wonder, is it a really long-term viable? And by the way, on another point, sorry.
On another point, go on.
Talking about escorts in Ryanair planes, I just, after killing myself because I'm after giving him the idea.
Yeah, no, actually, I'll tell you, I was just going to say, I was going to mention
BJ
that just
Airlines,
for...
wasn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, but I remember a couple of years ago reading this story about, it was actually one of the hosties, one of the Ryanair hosties, and it turned out that she had a sideline, she was from, I think, the Czech Republic, she had a sideline in porn. Yeah. Anyway, that's of no real relevance.
I wonder which one was the sideline.
Well, there you go, yeah. But I know that's not relevant, but I thought it was pretty interesting.
Right, let's switch fast a bit.
It says a lot about how much Ryanair pays if you have to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch along to Phil Cullen, the apprentice man that's gone bust.
Yeah.
No, I would take the view that the man made an effort. He went out there, he started a business many years ago, created businesses, this, that and the other. In watching him in the one or two episodes I saw of Apprentice, the way he was, I can remember one episode where the team were sent off to design a wrapper for a bar of chocolate or something, and he ridiculed him. He was the king. And like, I don't mind the fact that he, you know, built up a business and it failed. That happens. You go into business, that's a chance. You need to be able to do that if you're in business. But the way he was talking to the young people that were coming onto The Apprentice and pointing at them, and you're fired, and all this kind of shit, because of that, and that alone, I find it really hard to feel sorry for him.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is it. I think when you build yourself up that much, and he was writing self-help books as well, you know, like, you know, have some apples or something like this, or eat your apples. I can't remember what it was. I wouldn't be particularly interested. But when you build yourself up that much, I mean, like, the higher you go, the more you're going to fall. It's kind of funny.
Well,
but the real question is, what's he going to do next? Because, I mean, whether or not he's somebody who's just going to sort of like decide it's time for retirement, you know, and like, you know, get his pension or something, probably not. I mean, he's still a very well-connected guy, and even if he is debt, my imagination is that the kind of ambition or ego or whatever it is that drove him that far is probably going to force him to. He's going to have some sort of like idea to try and get himself back. But yeah, I doubt he's going to be pointing the finger at anybody saying you're fired, because they'll just say you're full of shit. Fuck you.
But you know, it says a lot, I think, about the viewing public, that's how he was. He was horrible. But equally, the Apprentice judges in the English Apprentice and like X Factor, Simon Cowell.
Oh yeah,
these people have to be horrible, and it's because people.
It's
It's the
part of the show.
gladiator thing.
Yeah.
People want to see other people suffer.
Yeah, yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah, I hate reality TV. I
Yeah.
really, really hate it. I generally tend to hate the people who put themselves forward for it, all this kind of stuff.
That's the point I'm making. It's very hard to feel sorry for someone like that. I mean,
Yeah.
you were saying there, you know, the higher you go in business, the harder you fall. I mean, that's not the case at all. There's plenty of people who have climbed high and stayed high, you know what I mean?
Yeah, very
but,
true,
But
very
it's
true.
just very difficult to feel sorry for somebody that's treating young people like that.
Yeah,
on public
absolutely. I
television.
mean, like, and
And
destroying
it's-
their confidence, because that
Yeah,
ultimately
exactly.
is part of it. You know, if you are publicly humiliating somebody, you know, that's not like fostering growth. You know, that's just saying, "Hey, you're crap." You know, yeah, like that's not good.
And
But it's
no
what the
role
public
model.
wants.
Like, there's obviously people at home who've got businesses and see it and probably wondering, am I too nice to my employees for saying fair play, you made a stab at it?
Yeah.
I'd have done no better, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, in the real world, you have to be nice to your employees if you're going to get what you're giving and things.
Oh, absolutely.
But
If
I
it's a
mean,
case that you're a wage
yeah.
slave, you know, I mean, like
Yeah.
what you're going to find, like one of the things I notice with restaurants is that any time I'm in a restaurant or a bar, whatever it is, and the person working there is just a real asshole or just has this bad attitude. I know that people have bad days and all this kind of thing, but I think a lot of things go back to management, and if you're, you know, being treated like unfairly, like with unfair harshness by your employer, by the person in charge, well, it's not going to motivate you. I mean, like the most motivation you might have is to see how you can, you know, try and do as little work as possible, and it will pass on forward.
Absolutely.
And if you are motivating the staff and there is somebody that's treating the customers wrong, it's still the manager's fault for letting them there.
Yeah, I mean, I remember actually working in a call centre years ago, which was an intrinsically horrible experience, but I was doing customer service, and anyway, it was home delivery of groceries in Britain, and the only probably intelligent person I talked to over the phone was this lady who was saying that she was CEO of a company, and she said, look, something I know myself is that 97% of problems can be traced back to management in one way or the other, whether it's a bad hiring policy or just the way that people are treated. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, there's another story that came out of the Irish Independent today, Peter and Paul, but this is Paul and Paul.
Yeah.
Ward and Anderson, apparently Mr. Ward Senior and Mr. Anderson Senior set up this company years ago, and apparently they own most of the cinemas, or a huge percentage of the cinemas in the country. And now the two sons are running the companies, and they're at each other's throats, and they're going through the High Court for all different, and they're setting up separate businesses and still owning the joint businesses now. And you just think, like, outside of the story itself at all, you just think of, you know, I mean, is this possibly greed, egos, is it just a personality clash? Maybe it's a pure fun for the Competition Authority. Maybe they're the best of buddies behind the scenes, drinking pints, although I highly doubt it from what I read in the paper.
Yeah, if they're going through the courts, you know, that's a big deal. I suppose with guys like this, especially if you grow up in that kind of environment, in that kind of business environment, and you know that you're going to be involved in running this like absolutely huge multi-million enterprise, you know, it will go to your head some little bit. And people, they become less likely to back down. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening, but certainly, no matter how rich somebody is or no matter how smart somebody is, it doesn't mean that they're above these things. Yeah, I mean, like, for all we know, it could
What would be a possible solution to a scenario like this, even outside of yours, where you've got two
even
people?
outside of the conventional, you know, looking at the sort of like less conventional ways to do it. You know, why don't they just like have a couple of games of pool or darts or something like? No, seriously, or arm wrestle it. You know, I mean, if they're going to be that macho and manly about it, boxing or UFC, something like that.
Just throw the two of them out and bring in somebody new.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on the shareholding that they have, like whatever stakes they have in the company.
You mean it depends on real issues?
Yeah. Oh, you're right. What
them
am I
out.
doing talking about? Feck that.
Legality,
Yeah,
ownership.
yeah. Reality and sort of like non-nonsense. Yeah. No. Let's get back to doing it like American Gladiators or something, and they have to hit each other with swivel bats. Yeah, this kind of a thing.
Our tech lads have come up with one of those games on the
Battle it out.
Battle it out. On
Like
that.
I couldn't even share a jumper with my sister. Never mind a business. I mean the notions of it. So, I mean, but this is it again. Like
Why couldn't
family
you, why
businesses.
couldn't you share a jumper with your sister?
Oh,
Don't you love your sister?
Do you
What
not
did
like
she
your sister at all?
Did Daddy love her more?
No, but I'm just saying. No, she buys really cheap bloody jumpers, and it would never work, you know.
Oh,
It
okay,
just
okay.
comes down to this.
It's
But
got
and she
nothing
says
to-
I stretch them, and anyway.
But no, you said you said that you couldn't share your jumper with her. No, where does the cheap jumper come
The
from?
hypothetical jumper.
You mean your sister isn't
But,
deserving of a very good jumper because she's used to cheap stuff?
You should have to buy her own jumper from
Don't
now
you
on.
love your sister?
Yeah.
This is what
She's
it's getting
wonderful.
back to.
Do you know what problem with my sister is that she's a doctor, so everyone who knows about the Heffernans knows of the doctor one. All the rest of us are just the disappointments. So yeah, I can't share much with her.
Oh my God.
My problem, anyway, back to it, is
Exactly.
family
We
businesses.
better go back to
Yeah,
we better go back to where we
yeah.
were because the next
This
thing,
isn't Dr. Phil, you know. Stop going on about your crap.
the next thing that's going to happen now is just go.
No, my point was family businesses.
Yeah.
You've got this sort of problem of entitlement. If you don't have a family business, you don't have kids who are coming along assuming they're going to take over everything. Well, just because I personally think that family businesses tend to result in spoilt children. But if
Yeah,
you've got more
yeah.
than one child, you've got a problem there. Because both of them have always thought they were everything. So if you've got a position where they're both going into this family business, there's going to be loggerheads, obviously. If you've only got
Yeah.
one child, you're fine. Or if you've only got one child that's going to take it over, that's fine. And the other one does something else. But like, I mean, Bill Gates has a great idea. Leave it all to everyone else. I mean,
Yeah.
he's not
Absolutely.
leaving
Yeah,
everything
absolutely.
to the kids. This notion of just giving everything to the second generation.
What about the saying of the businessman that if you have a son that wants to go into your business and he's a fool, you better hope to Christ he's lazy?
There you go. But it's meant to be the first generation builds the business, the second generation builds it up, and the third generation pisses it up against the wall or something, isn't it?
Yeah. I'll tell you, I actually know a little bit about this. I can't mention any names of people or businesses, but I
Go on,
certainly-
go on.
I've
What
just
I go on.
mentioned.
yeah, no. This is actually it's like based here in Cork, but I can certainly think of a circumstance of like a father who built up a particular business, you know, really well, and you know bought a lot of property in the city and this kind of thing, and then the son is now involved in the business, all this kind of thing, and he'll be obviously the one to take it over, and you know you can certainly see like. It's kind of like watching those planes going into the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, you know, it can happen. It can sort of like skip a generation that like the next generation will piss it up against a wall. That does happen. That, you know, if you do get everything handed to you a bit too much, it kind of undermines the drive. Now, it'll give you great confidence because you come from money, so it gives you confidence that you can't fail, that there's always a backup there. But it undermines you as well in that the actual sheer proper hunger or aggression isn't quite there, that it's just not wired in properly.
Do you know what I've noticed actually now we're on the topic of it? You know the way solicitors and businesses, you often see such a person and sons, like Heffernans and sons. You never see and daughters. I'd love to see that sometime.
Yeah.
They're cute, they're too cute to put their names to. That's
Well,
what.
Fair enough.
maybe it's some sort of thing that people take it more seriously if it's and sons, you know. That like I have seen businesses that are
Interfering women.
Yeah. Now, this is not my opinion, by the way, just to say that. But I have seen, let's say, and daughters, but it's usually clothes shops. Yeah. I swear to Christ. Yeah, clothes shops. Yeah.
That's interesting. But you wouldn't even see and family. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's obviously a
But then
tradition
maybe that's
aspect.
because the women were independent enough to go out and find careers of their own. Maybe
Exactly,
that's because
whereas
the
the
women were the ones
sons
who
had to
started.
take the business off the
'Cause-
father. There you have it.
They were the charity cases.
I
They
know.
came
No,
down.
I'll tell you. This actually
it's
shows
like-
the repression of men.
Yeah.
You know, the way that these sons, instead of being able to go off and do it on their own, you know,
Sonny,
they
don't
were
go
they
away.
were they were like, you know, put into their little box. You know, I mean, it's tough being a man sometimes, isn't it? Yeah.
I think this is going to be, we're never going to come to a conclusion on this.
No.
Right, moving on again, as we will.
Yep.
The next thing, I know this is painful, like, especially when I use the words bankers, bonuses, regulators. But
Yeah.
just a slightly different spin that I came up with myself was that all these bankers were being paid the money, these bonuses on the money they lent. Now, if they had been paying the money if they had been paid the bonuses on the money that was returned, would we not be better off? So, in other words, somebody lends whatever, and they get 0.0001% of every payment that's made coming back in, as opposed to what they lend. And in the case of, we'll say, where loan defaults, they get fined 0.0002%. So then they're very careful who they give money to. And then we don't need half of the amount of regulators. And so you're basically giving each person their own business model. Go and make money. We give them a basic salary of whatever.
Which would be astronomical anyway.
But like the idea of giving somebody money to give away, I mean, fucking hell, like where would you come up with that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have €1 million here, and I can keep 100,000 of that if I give you the 900,000.
Oh yeah, well I mean it was crazy. I mean like one thing that was just so obvious during the boom years was that when people were getting 130% mortgages, something is going wrong. Now, everything can be justified. There's ways to sort of like talk everything around, but that was just absolutely ridiculous. The difficulty with something like putting it on the basis of the returns that come in is that small and medium-sized enterprises would find themselves a little bit squeezed in terms of getting loans. I mean, they are at the moment anyway because banks are afraid to lend. But
if you go along, they're the more dodgy ones. But if you go along to homes, I don't know the percentage of loans that went out in those mad years between, we'll say, 2002 and 2008 that were to do with residential as opposed to commercial.
Yeah.
But you could definitely do it for homes. That would make sense for homes. Then if you look at enterprise, small enterprise, then I think there's a role for the government. Instead of having 700 working in the regulator's office, there might be a role where there'd be 500 of people that knew what they were doing. So in other words, the bank puts the loan forward for approval.
Yeah.
They approve it first. And there's some kind of guarantee scheme where it comes to small businesses. So it takes the onus off the bank manager of, where they're getting paid solely on the payments coming back in.
Yeah.
Some kind of
it definitely needs to be reformed anyway. The whole thing of bankers' bonuses is absolutely ridiculous, and it really hit me when Brian Goggin, I think he was the head of Bank of Ireland. I saw him interviewed after he would have quit his job, and it was interviewed by RT or whatever, and he had been getting these phenomenal bonuses, and he was asked, so are you still getting the big bonuses? And he was like, oh, no, my money is significantly down. And he was asked, so what are we talking about in terms of being down? And he was like, under 2 million, that he was going to get paid under 2 million euro. So it does need to be reformed. Whether or not bringing in the government and I mean, like, government has to be involved in business. Yeah. It does have to, but whether or not bringing in an extra layer of bureaucracy.
No, but I think
because that's what you're doing, and you're also sort of like underwriting it with the taxpayers' money, which is going to have an impact as well. That's going to have
it's going to have a positive impact, though, if you get a load of businesses up and running for the taxpayer.
True.
I mean, it's after happening anyway, because we let the banks run wild, and now. So I mean, what I'm proposing is that they wouldn't run wild, because they'd be making their income from the money that was returned into them, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? When you say, I wouldn't at all mind listening to a banker saying, my bonuses are down to 2 million this year. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I don't care then in a situation like that if the banker made 20 million euros in the year or 50 million euros in the year, because then it's made from real. Yeah. It's really made. Yeah. The problem is if you give somebody even 100 grand a year and they're fucking the whole system up, that 100 grand is way more costly than somebody that's paid 20 million, that's worth 20 million, that's bringing in an awful lot more than 20 million. Yeah, that's the problem. I have no issue with people earning 20 million a year, as long as it's actually justified. And not being paid 2 million a year or a pension of 1 million a year for the rest of their lives after fucking the whole Irish system up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, the way the bonuses were working, I think, was on the amount of revenue generated, which, I mean, like, a lot of that it has turned out to be inflated balance sheets, just absolutely it was, you know, bonuses being paid on, you know, fake money,
Yeah,
nearly.
absolutely. Well, the whole
You know,
thing
that
was
let's say
fake,
the
yeah.
balance sheet would be inflated because a bank like, let's say you could just pick an Irish bank, shall we say, they were getting their money by borrowing it in from somebody else as well. So, I mean, that like boosted up their figures, it boosted up their revenue, boosted up the bonuses, but it wasn't real. Yeah. But there you go.
There you go. Anyway, Jay,
Yeah.
you've some fella with an Irish name. You've an article or something.
Yeah,
some piece
yeah,
on
yeah.
A fella,
I'm
some fella with an Irish
running
name.
with this one because I can pronounce his name. Achilles Kalakis. Now, I'm not like overly familiar with the story, but he is an alleged fraudster. You know, it's still in process and in transit. But the guy basically he falsified rent guarantees. Was it
From Hong Kong.
from Hong Kong? What bank was it that it was?
AIB.
AIB, yeah, yeah. Anyway, there's this fantastic figure, 920 million. Obviously, we don't know yet whether or not this guy will be found innocent, guilty, whatever, whether he did it or not. But imagining that he did, you know, he's like Kaiser Soze or something. You know, just that's
He's unreal.
amazing. That's just a.
More importantly,
know-
the bank said to him, you know, they were meeting him. We're talking 900, and he was meeting the bank, and there was all these deals were going on. And the next thing, the bank turned around and said, "I'd like to meet a representative just so I can square off my books." A representative from the company who provided the the rent guarantees for the properties in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely no issue. He brought in this fella, completely bogus. He had nothing whatsoever to do with the company. I mean, look, 920
Yeah.
million,
Just 'cause
or
you're
he
using
allegedly did.
balls, isn't it?
But
Oh,
but
yeah,
listen, the man
yeah.
is a fucking genius, like.
Yeah.
I mean, there's fellas there going around the place, you know, pickpocketing people on the street and getting, you know, getting into
Like
trouble
you're-
and
yeah.
into court and all this kind of thing. This fella just walks in and produces
Yeah.
a couple of documents. Then he produces a man. Oh, here's a man. And then he walks out with 920 million, allegedly.
Yeah.
I mean, if this fella is found guilty, I want to meet him. That's the way to go.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You got to learn from this guy. And actually, looking at the picture of him, you'd expect somebody like that. In my head, he'd be like, you know, like 6'5", this like amazing fucking charismatic character who just commands attention. You know,
I
like
see
a general.
George Clooney.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what
We're
I
talking
see.
Ocean's 11 here. No, he's a nerd. He's a nerd. Now maybe that worked for him. But yeah, yeah, yeah. He's like this baldy-headed, like you know, chubby glasses dude. You know, like male pattern baldness sort of a thing.
Is he Greek?
Well, it's certainly a Greek name anyway, yeah. Yeah, this kind of guy. But then again, I was thinking about that in a little bit more depth. I was thinking, all this has to do with figures and numbers.
Yeah.
A nerd coming in, nerds are trustworthy that way. Nerds
It's
know
true.
numbers.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd sort of like believe the nerd. It would generate
Yeah.
confidence in you. And also, you know, like nerds are reliable. You think, no, the nerd won't screw me
No.
over. I
He's
trust
not
the
a
nerd.
scumbag. Yeah.
Exactly, but that's what they do.
Yeah.
They sneak in.
Oh.
But,
Yeah.
no, but you reckon nerds are into
Nerds.
numbers, and you can trust nerds. You said nerds are into numbers.
Well, look, we're operating with stereotypes here, which is probably what he was working
Yeah.
with. You know, he probably spotted, you know, that like.
Well, here's another
Yep.
stereotype for you, right? Moving quickly along from him, right? A situation where,
moving swiftly on.
This segue.
now legally, I don't think there's anything that Ernest and Young, nerds, numbers, right?
Ernest is a real nerd name as well, isn't it?
But
I mean,
it's
maybe that's why.
Ernst.
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 But
Ernst.
Ernest as but
Yeah.
the accountants are Ernst.
Yeah, Ernst. Yeah,
But
you're
Ernest, yes, it would be.
But it still sounds like a
Good
nerd's
nerd's name.
name. Maybe that's
So
why
if
they
someone
became
were
accountants.
to do the AIB thing again
Yeah.
in the future, they should probably go in under the name of Ernest.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
and
go on.
also, Ernest is a trustworthy name, isn't it?
It
Yes.
is, and
Yeah.
Ernest wouldn't do a thing to you.
I'll tell you, because they're so trustworthy, their profits this year, according to the Examiner, are up 5.7% to 130 million. So they're clever nerds, clever, honest nerds, or are they? I don't know. But what I do know is when you look at the whole bank collapse thing and all the rest of it, there seems to be no mention of where they came out of this when the whole thing broke. And legally, they're probably not wrong, because at the end of every set of accounts, there's a statement, Breed, isn't there, to say we are not responsible for.
Yeah.
Go on. What's the wording of
A
it?
disclaimer,
We
yeah?
certify it to the best of our knowledge.
We certify
Yeah.
it based on the information provided to us. That's it. Yeah. Okay. So that's fine. The next thing. So legally they're probably okay. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But morally, or whatever way you want, either commercially, whatever other way you want to look at it, they have been doing the Anglo accounts. And the next thing, every year, the day before the year end, there's billions pumped in from another bank. I won't mention the name because I might be wrong. From another bank, pumped into this, and it's shifted back in a few days.
Yeah.
Now, there's only two possibilities in that case. Forget about the legal side of this, right? One, they didn't see it. Now, we're talking here billions, like. We're not talking about a receipt for a packet of chocolate biscuits, right?
Yeah.
Two, they knew about it, and they said, leave it off.
Yeah.
And so your honest person that's great with numbers, nerd,
Your nerd.
Accountant even.
is
Yeah, or accountant.
Or
yeah.
accountant is
to,
up.
to give them their official
Yes.
slave title.
is up
Yeah.
5.7% to 130 million euros.
Yeah.
And you just think to yourself, which, look at it from the other side, commercially, morally, whatever way, common sense, let's say.
Yeah.
Which would be worse for them? To say, we didn't see it. You go, fuck, there's no way that you could be that. If they are that
Yeah,
thick,
yeah,
if they are that thick, there's a serious problem.
I know, it's a bit like...
And then the other side, if they did see it and did nothing about it, but you were saying there was rumours out of London months before that.
Oh, well, look, I mean, this is the thing. With, like, once something breaks in the news, like I had friends working in the city in London, and certainly difficulties were being talked about and were known about in certain circles. Now,
Every
you know,
circle except the government, like. They
yeah,
have to
well,
wait
I
till
mean,
2 o'clock
like
in the morning.
I'm sure they had an idea, but I mean, like the government, you know, it wouldn't suit their purposes to actually shake confidence in the Irish system and in the Irish market. But just mentioning about the whole thing, and this, you know, it's probably not a particularly appropriate analogy, but the whole Ernst and Young thing, and that they were the accounting firm for Anglo, it kind of reminds me of that Shaggy song, you know, it wasn't me, you know, just like, like, I don't know, I'm just a girl.
But either
kind of
way,
a
the
thing.
point is either way, morally or common sense wise, it was.
I bet a girl wouldn't have let a mistake like that slip through.
No, there would have been more honesty and better
It should have been
housekeeping,
Evelyn
probably.
and Young, not Ernst and Young. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
the
all
problem.
of our problems would have been solved. Last topic of the day. 2011, we had a deficit in Ireland of 18 billion euros, which is 50 million euros per day Ireland is losing, which equates to 2 million euros per hour, or in the space since I started this topic, which is probably 1 minute, we have now lost 34,000 euros.
Wow.
That is how much money we're losing. Or we lost, sorry, we were losing in 2011. It's probably not too bad now. They probably have it down to 31 million.
They should get
31,000
Ernst and Young in to do the books,
Yeah.
and everything
That's
would
right.
be
And we'd be
fine.
There we
fine.
go.
Yeah. I just want to say I take that back. Obviously, you know, Ernst and Young are honest and everything, so
Yeah,
it
they
was a
just weren't
joke.
given the numbers.
Yeah.
So,
I
Yeah.
don't know what percentage of that has to do with the banking of our income.
Yeah,
Or,
a
sorry, of our
huge
loss.
chunk of it. I mean, like on the one hand, you've got the amount of money that the government was willing to underwrite Anglo and subsequently other banks as well. But the interest rate that has been charged, that's the real problem, because that just keeps ticking over,
Yeah.
it keeps building up. And that's why, quite legitimately, it's being said that, you know, our grandkids are going to be paying this. Now, realistically, and I've been thinking this for years, in like Germany and Belgium and Holland, you've got like these bankers, they wake up each morning, they go into work, they meet each other and they're like, yeah, Paddy's still paying. I know, I can't believe it. This is impossible.
Yeah.
I didn't think they'd still be doing that. Yeah, I know. Yeah, ginger balls from Ireland, what does they call him? Ender? Yeah, he coming along. Yeah. This kind of thing. Yeah, it's ridiculous how it hasn't been written down more, you know, more definitively. I'm not sure, though I do know part of the difficulty is that all the the German and let's say the Northern European and French banks that would have given the money to Ireland that was loaned out, they would have taken out insurance on the loan as well from US banks and US investment companies. And that one of the reasons that things weren't written down originally in the bailout is that Timothy Geithner, the Secretary of the Treasury in the US, that he knew about the underwriting for the banks in Europe. So he knew that that was another way that it was going to cost America. So it just, it couldn't. My guess is they're just going to try and keep it going for as long as possible, squeeze as much money out as possible, and then it will be written down. But the other side to it as well is that Europe has been operating at two different levels of efficiency between, let's say, the Northern Europe and Southern Europe, which aren't technically Northern Europe, but like realistically, it operates like, Portugal and Spain, all these places.
Well, it did anyway.
But what I would imagine is that there is an opportunity here for the EU that once they have you by the balls this way financially, that all these countries are going to collapse without the money that's being put into it. Then they can force through all these changes, liberalise the economies, absolutely restructure them so that on the one hand they're going to be more competitive, but on the other hand they're hopefully going to be better markets in the future. But it is a way to actually get them in line, and part of that as well is maybe reducing the power of unions, all these different things that that affect the way the economy operates. And that does take years, so they're going to try and hold us by the balls for as long as they can.
Yeah, well, there was a situation then when Google set up in Ireland and they have the turnover of 10 billion a year through Irish companies, but even though some of that's coming in from other whatever, and they pay 10,000 million euros, and they pay 5.6 million euros in tax because of all. And they're right. I mean, that's the way the law is. They're not doing anything illegal. That's the way the law is. But are we not in a position where we could turn around and say, listen, we're going to put our corporation tax up to 50% across the board, unless you reinvest the money in Ireland. You reinvest the money in Ireland and we drop it to 2%.
They'd leave.
Yeah, they would. You
They'd
can't
leave,
mess with
bang,
corporation tax.
like that.
But okay, wait a while now. Hold on
Yeah.
a while. Yeah, okay. Let's forget about the figure of 50%. Doesn't matter what the figure is.
We're not the only country with low corporation tax.
No,
Yeah,
I know that.
yeah. I mean, like even
But
France
hold on a while,
advertised itself as being lower than Ireland once you take in all these different discounts.
But listen, hold on a while. We're a very creative race, the Irish people. We're known to be creative through music, through many things. We're a creative race, okay?
Yeah.
Is it not the case that they have sucked all the IT brains, some people, into these companies, the Intels, the Googles, whatever they are, and therefore, because our brain power is inside in these companies, we have no chance of starting something ourselves. Should it not be the other way around? Should we not be creating the businesses and getting the other countries of the world to manufacture them for us or to put them together?
Well, I mean, like that's a difficulty that goes
What are
broader
Google
than
providing?
just saying corporation tax. I mean, that's actually something about the way that Ireland operates as a country that people, so many talented people, and I mean, you meet them in Australia, you meet them in London, like really tough, smart, hard-working, brave people.
Yeah.
They leave, and maybe it's something to do with they leave Ireland.
Yeah.
You know, that they feel that they're always going to have a better chance. And I mean, I even found it myself. I was able to get jobs and do things in Australia that would have been very difficult for me to work my way in. I mean, I was making really good money over there, and coming back here, you get shit jobs.
Yeah.
You work in shit jobs. I mean, it's just something about the culture of the country.
But isn't that something we have
not
to change, like, as opposed to turning around and say, like, how do you fix that? You don't turn around and say, we get shit jobs in Ireland and we get great jobs in Australia. Surely that's something, there must be a solution brought to the table to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jesus, you could work the whole of your life. You have to make a decision based on the information that's available to you. You could try and work the whole of your life trying to change this country. I mean, like, if you look at it this way, we got divorced in 1995.
1994 was the referendum, 95 was the legislation.
Okay, 95, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the mid-90s for divorce, and it was passed by 0.5% by a village or something.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a country that changes quickly. That does not say dynamic to me.
But do we just sit back and accept that?
No, I mean, like, possibly the best thing to do is to get out, because you've got like one life. Are you going to put 20 years of your life into trying to change a country and then have nothing happen? Or will you go abroad? And this is the way people think. I know this is the way people think. Or will you say, you know what, I could do that. I could spend like the rest of my working life frustrated trying to change things, you know, and still see the same old men who are elected into the Dáil because their great granddad got a lucky shot in at a tan in 1920. You know, I mean, think about it. Or in like 2 years, 5 years, I can have a fantastic house in Australia, in Canada, wherever. I mean, that's a realistic choice.
But you've been abroad, you've been in Australia and all. What percentage of the Irish young that go over there stay there for say more than a, I don't know, 5 year period, even
that's
5 year.
First of all, I don't actually know the percentage. What I will tell you is there's a big difference between the people who want to come back and who want to stay. A lot of people want to stay, but you go over on a working holiday visa. So, I mean, that imposes certain limitations, and the max you're going to stay on that kind of visa.
I hear an awful lot of people that want to come back. I mean, like I've travelled a bit as well, and you'd hear an awful lot of people, I want to come back. I think Irish people, by and large, would like to, but you know...
They're not willing to sacrifice the standard of life they have. I mean, in Australia, great money, you can do these super things on the weekends.
The quality of life is the clincher.
Whereas you come home to Ireland, I mean, what are you doing? Crap money, crap job.
You go to the pub.
Yeah,
that's
same old fellas down there every Sunday.
And I mean, there are other things that can be done, but I don't know. There's sort of like a poverty of ideas and adventure here.
Well, why did you come back? Why did you come back, Jay? If it's so great down there, what brought you back here?
Because I didn't want to stay there illegally. Ultimately, I mean,
all right, okay,
that was exactly it.
If you could have been legal, you'd have stayed there.
Yeah, I would have stayed there.
You'd no longing to come back to Ireland.
Look, I'll tell you. I was out of Ireland for the guts of 2.5 years continuously. I did not set foot back in Ireland in that time. Now, whether or not I would have wanted to stay in Australia the whole of my life, I'm not sure, because I want to see other places as well. You know, there are more adventures to be had. But I wasn't, creaming myself at the idea of coming back just because I knew what it was like. It was on a downhill slide while I left. Then I'm turning on the TV news in Australia. I'm seeing that, I'm seeing that fat fucking bastard, Cowan, like basically signing over the country. Yeah. And I'm thinking, God, I remember actually...
But he's a great singer.
So I've heard. Yeah. But, it wasn't inspiring. It didn't make me proud to be Irish. And this whole idea of the fighting Irish, it really knocked that on the head, because that wasn't fighting. I mean, when you see, let's say, countries that will put themselves in isolation, now granted, they can be full of psychopaths like Serbia or something, but the whole thing of the fighting Irish, that just sort of like died for me a little bit that day.
But the only thing is, I'll tell you, I was out in the Rubicon, I think it's the Rubicon Centre out in the CIT, where they have this building to help people starting new businesses that have degrees or whatever. And I know from the last recession in the 80s, there were some fantastic businesses created during recessions. Because people, when things are flying, people get late. I mean, I saw it out in Charities, Lanzarote myself, people coming in. And most of the people that had money were property developers who just walked into a bank, got 10 million euros, bought property. They knew nothing. They weren't architects. They had no design, or they had no background in it, a lot of them. They made another 5 million. They walked in and borrowed 20. And like, these people are so boring to speak to. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas now, I feel an energy around the place again, that there's people there saying, hey, shit, we have to get up off our ass now and start something. There's not a job there. What do we do? And I see that. I feel that around the place. And outside in places like the Rubicon, there are some fantastic businesses. And I think there will definitely be, in the next few years, I think there will be a Google, a company of the size of Google, or something that's
is
going
the way
to kick
forward,
out
definitely. I mean, something
and we are a
that
creative
has like
race.
A global access anyway. That's because like Ireland, we don't have, well, we do have oil apparently, but like we have to forget about that now. That's like which is just it's just one of those bizarre things. But I mean, in terms of natural resources, we're limited enough.
Agriculture and bullshit.
Yeah, this is it. But I mean, there's only so much that we can do. So
tourism.
The real thing is to you know, just like try and like expand into the world as much as possible.
But I think we are now, you know, I think I see a lot of young people now today, and they are moving. And we are a creative race, and I think there's going to, over the next few years, there's going to be a couple of Google-sized establishments come out of Ireland for whatever reason.
Well, hopefully. I mean, look, you know, as pessimistic as I am and as critical as I am of the country, if that happened, I would be delighted. I would love to be proved wrong on it. Absolutely. But we've been independent for nearly 100 years now. We have come up with no Ericsson, no Nokia, nothing like that. And if you look at, and I know this isn't like an absolutely, obviously the scale and the size of the countries are different, but if you look at a country like South Korea, yeah, in 1950, we'll say, they just come from being occupied by Japan, all this kind of stuff. The peninsula was divided. They have this like phenomenally huge war that involved China, America, Britain, all these different countries. And technologically, they were at the level of the wooden plough. Now they have Samsung and Honda and Hyundai. How is it that in that same time, Ireland, which, you know, instead of being like out on the periphery of the world, out in Asia, it's part of Europe. It's right there. We speak English, which means we've got access to the, you know, the biggest market in the world. Well, certainly at the time, the biggest market in the world, the US. None of those things happened here. Like, what does that tell you? You know, I mean, it's, you know,
Well,
I'd love to be proved wrong in all of this, but
I understand completely. And if you look at Ireland, we are, even location-wise, we're in the best spot that you could be in the world. You've all of Europe, Asia to your east, you've the States to the west, and you're right smack in the middle of the two, you know, the powers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, even access, I suppose, towards Africa, where there are phenomenal resources
We need
available.
more business people and enterprising people involved in making policy. So
Yeah.
is what
Common
it comes
sense
down to.
policies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
As
like,
opposed to just the politicians doing everything.
yeah. I mean, like, we've had the same bunch of old men
Yeah.
running the country for like since the very start. I mean, like, Ireland getting independence, it was almost like the most conservative revolution that ever happened.
But we didn't have independence. Like, the church were running Ireland.
Yeah.
The church were running Ireland up to 70 some, whatever, 80s even, whatever you'd like to say. Then we were, from the mid-80s or somewhere, we ran it ourselves right into the ground. And now we'd like to thank the Germans for coming in and running it for us.
Yeah, let me tell you, like, there's a part of me that says maybe the whole, like, Irish crash was a good thing because it shakes things up, because it's going to perform some liposuction on the civil service, you know, and, you know, hey, like, I welcome the Fourth Reich in that case, you know, because, like, the Germans, they really are.
Speaking of which, I mean, the Germans never finished off paying their reparations after the war. They were let off with that.
They actually, I'll tell you, they paid off, I think, the last instalment of it, you know, just a couple of years ago. But the thing about the reparations is it was ultimately written down till it was, like, valueless. So you're absolutely right, yeah. It was written down to having virtually no value whatsoever. But, I mean, it was absolutely identified that, you know, like, you needed to have Germany strong and dynamic for Europe to succeed. And of course, the other thing is that there were worries about the Russians coming in and all that kind of stuff. You know, so you needed a strong Germany, economically powerful.
Mighty. Anyway, let's hope that maybe this time, when we get going for the second time under our own steam, when we get the IMF and the ECB out of the country, our second run at doing it ourselves, let's hope that we'll be a lot more successful, and we will produce a few Googles and etc. and whatever.
We might bring Angela Merkel in as a panelist maybe next week. She can take
Oh
my
wait,
place.
then we'd have to get an interpreter as well, wouldn't we?
No, we'd have to get somebody like Vladimir Putin to control her. Anyway,
He's
thanks
awesome.
a million for
that
watching.
dude.
That's Fec TV's business program for the week. Thank you, and we'll see you all next week. Ciao.